Hello and welcome into the Coach on the Couch podcast with your hosts, Martin Fleming and Stephen Alexander Simmons. This fortnightly podcast covers various topics relating to subjects from career and work, health, nutrition and well-being to parenting, relationships, and much more. Each episode will deal with a particular area of these. So, if you are interested in learning and hearing some different thoughts, ideas, and even get some tips or helpful suggestions on these areas of life, or perhaps you are into self-development, then we hope you will stay with us and hopefully enjoy a fun, insightful, and what we hope will be an interesting discussion for you.
Hello and welcome to Coach on the Couch. Thank you for joining us for our first episode. My name is Martin Fleming and I'm a career and business coach. I help professionals find their ideal job, rediscover their passion for what they do in their work, and if they're unhappy with what they do in their work and want to find a new path. I also help with health and nutrition. I'm a nutrition therapist as well, so I do health coaching, and so I work with people to have better health, better energy, and where that relates to career as well, that can also impact there. So, also with me today is my co-host.
Hello, how you doing? This is. I can't believe that we're actually here. This is like our first podcast, isn't it? Hi everyone, I am Stephen Alexander Simmons and I'm a mental health coach and I help people to have a better relationship with themselves. This is I can't believe we're actually here, Martin. This is absolutely awesome.
It's only taken a year.
I know, like an absolute year. But I mean, it's crazy, isn't it, that you can have like these ideas, but it can actually take so long to actually come into fruition. But I'm kind of curious about this. I mean, why do you think that is?
What, that it's taken a year?
Yeah, I mean,
apart from trying to pin you down.
I think that's a little bit harsh. That's a little bit harsh. But I think sometimes it's like, you know, you have these ideas in life, don't you? And you know, you're kind of convinced it's a good thing to do, and you kind of up for it. But actually, I don't know about you, but when it comes to actually doing it, sometimes like the overthinking kind of like kicks in. And I know for me, it's like, well, how am I actually going to do this? How is it going to come across? How is my voice going to come across? You know, am I going to sound stupid?
Oh, and I have that all the time. I had that just before we started.
So, and I think, you know, I was talking to someone the other day, and this person is involved with Women's Aid. I don't know that much about Women's Aid, but what she said to me, and I found this quite interesting actually. She said, "Do you know what?" And I said, "No." I said, "There's no such thing as Men's Aid," and she found it quite shocking that there isn't the same mental health support for men. And I found it interesting because we were talking earlier in the kitchen about it being kind of, was it Mental Health Week or something like that?
Yeah, in May.
In May, and. You know, we were kind of joking earlier about how there's this emphasis on, you know, opening up to people, yet when we do, we will often get shot down or it'll get misinterpreted. So a lot of people, and it's not, I don't think it's just a man thing, I don't know, I mean, you can correct me, but we tend to clam up more because we don't want that attack. We don't want to feel like we've got to defend ourselves, and we want to feel that it's comfortable to do that. So if we're putting an opportunity where, you know, we're invited to do that and we get shot down, then what effect is that going to have on us?
Yeah, well, I don't know, because with regards to not being more closed or whatever. It's like men have traditionally been, they've not been allowed to be emotional. You're a man, or that kind of thing. So that's always been an issue as well. That's why men close up or they don't share in the same way, because it's always it's been that you're not emotional or whatever. You've got to harden up, and so, which is always, that's why the supports have never really been there. It's only been a recent thing where it's been, realised that, men that there's a need for supports for men as well, and that kind of thing. More so than, females have always historically, they always share, they share everything between each other a lot of the time. So, but men don't. Men just get on with it, and they're expected to kind of just sweep everything to one side or whatever. So
I was just thinking about this, as you was talking, and I remember an incident where I was angry, like proper angry, and I was frustrated, and I was brought up that you don't take your anger out on people. So then the question for me was, growing up, was, well, what do you do with that anger? How do you process that anger? And so for me, I hit out the nearest thing, which happened to be my stereo. So, I cut my hand open and stuff like that. I had to have it all bandaged up. But it kind of got me thinking that as men then, I mean, obviously my frustration turned to anger, and it was control. It was in a controlled environment in the sense that, nobody was around, nobody else got hurt, and so psychologically there was that sense of like that self-harm, really, because if you can't express it, then how is that going to come out? Now in that situation, it was like a self-harm thing, really, because it was either hurt myself or hurt something around. But I'm guessing when you're in, say, the streets, for example, and you get frustrated, then how else do you think are we taught to express anger? Because I know growing up it wasn't something that was talked about, other than don't get angry, and I think it's a real issue for not just for men, but I think for a lot of men and it's a very strong emotion, isn't it, anger?
Yeah, I mean, you were saying about frustration and stuff. I think I think the other issue is like it really depends on what it is people are getting frustrated. Where that either that anger, that frustration, those emotions are coming from, in terms of how you deal with that, and kind of what supports or what other impacts that has. What supports are there to deal with it, and if there isn't any, how then does that end up portraying itself? So, I mean, just in recent time, obviously, I mean, as someone who deals with, yourself with mental health issues and stuff, in recent time we've had the whole pandemic and lockdowns, and then how, it's how that's affected lots of people in the different ways in which that's affected people. I mean, there's lots of mental health kind of related aspects that have come into, people looking for work or even going back to work, and the whole high anxieties and stuff, and how people look at that. So, and you'd have that, again, there's no kind of gender separation there. It's like that happens for whether it's men or women. But again, you would have that traditionally, and depending on what kind of generation you are, there'd be some men would just like go, I don't want to bother anyone with that, and I just get on with it or whatever. But they might be unhappy going back into an office environment, or they might not want to go back to work, or whatever it might be. So I think there's also that side of it when you're talking about frustrations, and And I
think COVID really did. I think COVID was a launch pad in some ways for mental health, isn't it? Because suddenly it kind of reshaped and restructured society like massively in a way that we didn't expect. Because like you said, you know, if you're in a job, you would go to the job. That was your structure. That was your pattern. That was your routine. You was out of the house. You was the provider. And then suddenly you kind of put in this situation where, you know, the kids are at home and the wife's at home or the partner's at home or whatever, and then you're at home. And it really did mess with the dynamics, didn't it?
Yeah, and you've got either, I mean, with that was you're all at home, but then it's like, well, some of you could work from home, others lost their jobs. So, I mean, it was like, and that has a whole realm of emotions and stuff attached to that. So, and worries and anxiety. So,
just on that note, it for me, I'm kind of just thinking out loud now. How, I'm not saying important, but how fixated we are around jobs and our identity. It's almost like we are our jobs. You know, if we don't have a job, therefore we are nothing. It's like the end of the world. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's what people identify as. It's, you know, that's something that as soon as you ask someone, who are you, they'll always answer with their job title.
And that's, do you know what, that's another thing that annoys me. You know, I mean, I'm not a very sociable person, I'm the first one to admit that. And I don't like social gatherings, but one of the very first questions, you know, you mentioned first questions, is that they ask me, oh, what do you do then? They don't ask, you know, who are you, or, you know, what do you like? I mean, I'd rather they say, look, do you like cake, or do you like beer or something? But no, one of the first questions is, so what do you do then? And it really, really does wind me up, because, you know, I am not my job. And, you know, one of my previous jobs was being a minister of religion, and talk about how to close down a conversation very quickly. That was a conversation stopper, you know. And then, yeah, so it was either a bad thing, or then people would go, oh, yes, well, I used to go to church once. And you'd be like, okay, well that's nice. And then that'd be it. You'd be like the weird person in the corner, and you'd be like the token religious person that everyone avoided. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I felt even more of a social leper, and I felt even more awkward then, especially if I was in a room where there wasn't the same kind of, you know, they weren't from that same background or whatever. So you know, the sort of places I used to go to, you know, there were the very party people and stuff, and I was very kind of, I don't live this lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? I've given this lifestyle up. You know what I mean? I'm trying to like lead this holier than thou separate life, and it just didn't work for me. So, you know, saying that, oh, I'm a minister of religion, was just an absolute, you know, some fell on stony ground. But yeah, it used to really wind me up, the fact that, you know, for me personally, I'm so much more than my job.
Yeah, but then, you know, as I say, that seems to be the you know, and until people realise, when you say to them, well, you know, but I mean, that doesn't typically come up in conversation, but it, you know, or you don't typically say it to someone, but it's just when people do realise that kind of thing, if you do any kind of self-development and things like that, personal development, either courses or, you know, counselling stuff or whatever, it's like people don't really realise, but that's the first reaction you get when you say, who are you? And or, you know, or you get, what do you do, or whatever. It's always you're associated with what you do. I mean, it's a bit of a problem if you don't do anything. So and then people have other attitudes and prejudgments of you. So
that's, do you know what, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember when I became unemployed, and I would walk up and down the streets, you know, and I got like you know, maybe less than £1 in my pocket, and there's this sense of, I can't even afford to go into this shop, and I felt worthless because I hadn't got a job. And it's amazing the effects that it has on your, I'm not saying for everybody, because there are some people who actually don't want a job. You know, I was at the job centre, this one time, and they were trying to give me tips on how not to get a job. I found that hilarious. And there are people who are professionals at not getting a job. This was like a new learning for me. But for me personally, who has always been in a job of some description, whether it's even as a volunteer role, to not have a job was, for me personally, the most demeaning and valueless thing I have probably ever done and ever felt. And it was interesting. It's an interesting experience.
So I mean, and I don't know, back in terms of going back to the identity thing, we wear so many different hats anyway. We have so many different roles, and again, it's like it's all about identifying or and people have to identify in some way, but it's like the combination of all of that is what makes up our makeup, or what makes some of us, but it isn't what we are. It's kind of, so you might work and have a role title. You might be a father, or you might be a single person, or you might there's so many different, you're someone's brother or nephew or whatever. You have so many roles and hats, but it at the end of the day, that also doesn't make who you are, because as who you are as a person is a combination of personality and characteristics and life experiences and various things like that. So that, I mean, and I think that's what people forget when, okay, I know when someone says, oh, who are you, or what, or whatever, that kind of thing, that it's not, you can't really go into this big, deeper, meaningful response about, oh, well, my characteristics and personality are like, and list off a whole load of stuff. But at the same time, you are more than what certain identifies you, certain identities or whatever of you. So
I'm thinking, because obviously we're going to do some more episodes, and I'm thinking one of the things that we should cover, I think, is this conflict about, it kind of sits side by side, but how do you sell yourself and how do you market yourself in a world that says, you shouldn't have an ego, you shouldn't you shouldn't have a chip on your shoulder, don't think too highly of yourself, and I mean, for me, and I think, growing up, there was a lot of that. Yet isn't it funny that when it comes to the whole kind of job world and stuff like that, or even in the dating world, I mean, that's a whole different episode in itself, probably, isn't it? And as a coach, actually, I'd be interested to kind of get your perspective on this. One of the phrases that's going around at the moment, and I love buzz phrases, is that there's no such thing as competition. The only person we're in competition with is ourselves, right? And it'd be interesting to have a debate with you on this one, actually, because I know you like a good debate. So it'd be good to kind of wrestle this one. I don't think it's for today, but certainly for another time. But, you go into the job market, you go into the relationship market, and you do have to sell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you go from that place of you shouldn't be this and you shouldn't be that, to now suddenly this new way of being says, actually, you need to, because if you don't, then you're not going to get that job. You're not going to get that woman or man, whatever. It's a bit of a head mess, isn't it?
Why I'm just thinking that I think the dating game is kind of a dating arena. It can be a very slightly different thing, because I feel there's a lot more to sell yourself in that field. I think sometimes it was definitely, when you look at online ways of that's done, there's a lot of dishonesty or deception. So a lot of people use filters and try and sell themselves by making themselves something that they're not. So they turn up at a date and they're probably not. They don't look anything like their picture did. So I think that, you know, that sounds a bit skeptical and skeptic of me, but
you're more of a work coach type thing, aren't you? So I'm guessing people, how do I say this politely, they are lenient with the truth on their CVs as well.
They can be, but it doesn't. Do you
think they ever get caught out by that?
That's not going to benefit them in the long run either. And a lot of recruiters and a lot of companies are going to know that, or they're going to discover that straight away. So, you know, and you know, if you make really unrealistic claims on your CV and recruiters do check into that, or they check with your references or whatever, and you know, that could definitely go against you. So as a coach and a career coach, I mean, in terms of the selling thing, I mean, if I'm working with someone, I would want them to be able to sell themselves, and you know, I totally get what you mean about the whole, you know, especially past generations where you'd be told, like, you know, well, if you think something too good of yourself, it was always considered something like boasting, or, you know, that kind of thing, and you weren't allowed to boast, you weren't allowed to, you know, and if you mentioned any term like loving yourself, it was a very arrogant type of thing. It was,
yeah.
So
totally.
So I get that, but it's but in terms of your worth and your value, then yes, you know, I mean, and I would definitely work with people to realize that and to see that, because you, if you want your ideal, you know, career or job or whatever, you're not going to get that unless you're passionate about it and it's something you love, and you know, you're kind of, you can sell yourself to, you know, to people that you want to work for or whatever, that kind of a thing. So you've got to be happy with yourself as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange kind of situation.
Do you think? I mean, obviously, we were talking about the lack of support for men in mental health. Do you think conversations like this are helpful and beneficial? And how do we encourage other men to do that? I mean, are we expecting them to kind of be something that they're not? You know, I mean, how would you encourage guys to open up a little bit more, do you think?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't have a straightforward answer to that one. Because the only way you can do that is for men to feel comfortable with opening up and being comfortable with emotions, or with how they're feeling and expressing how they feel, and that it's okay to express that. Now, yes, younger generations, probably there's probably a lot more of them are happy to do that. The older generation, probably not so much, and it's trying to, like, I don't like the word convince, but it's that kind of encourage them to help them to realize that it's fine to do that, and it's you know, we're all the same at the end of the day, and to show emotion or to be emotional is not necessarily a bad thing. So I don't have a particular method or tip that, you know, it's because it's how you can. I don't know how you can act. I don't know if there's one particular method about kind of getting men to open up. But I suppose if as long as they know there's places to go or people to see, and it's that kind of making sure that that knowledge is out there maybe, and the awareness of services, or people who offer supporting services and stuff like that, because the lack of knowledge, the lack of awareness of that is also what creates a lot of issues within, for men, whether that's kind of depends on what level of mental health issues we're talking about, but even up to self-harm and kind of taking or attempting to take your own life and stuff like that it's like for a lot of those men, it would be because they didn't know where else to go and where else to turn. So I think a lot, there's a lot to be said for making sure there's enough publicity for that. And, I know there's a lot more done now, and definitely in this country.
So there's certainly a lot to think about, isn't there? And I think hopefully through this podcasting journey, I think it'd be good to kind of explore more kind of mental health and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think this has been an amazing opportunity to be able to do this. But I mean, has it been as scary as you thought it'd be?
I don't know. Maybe, well, at the start, especially if I have to start something, I always, it's like, am I going to think of what to say? But it's not been too bad, I suppose. But, it all depends on if we bored the listeners to death or not.
Oh, that's very true. That's very true. Well, thank you all for listening, and it's been great to be Coach on the Couch with me, Stephen Alexander, and Martin.
Martin Fleming. And the aim would be, I think, well, in my mind, the aim is to have one every 2 weeks. So I don't know how you feel about that, Steve. But
I feel that there's a lack of cake. That's what I feel.
A lack of cake?
There's definitely a lack of cake.
Well, it wasn't my fault. You didn't bring any coffee with you, was it?
That's true. Okay, so it'd be coffee and cake. That's very
on
true.
the couch.
Oh, on the couch. Okay, with plates. But,
yeah, well, I suppose we better. Otherwise, the ants will get all the leftovers.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Right. So until 2 weeks from now, then.
See you later.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the fortnightly Coach on the Couch podcast with your hosts, Martin Fleming and Stephen Alexander Simmons. You can find this podcast on the following platforms: Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts, and more platforms to follow. You can leave comments and feedback directly on the Anchor platform, or you can contact us directly by emailing us at coachonthecouch22@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to being with you soon.